It's time to amp up the Kentucky Derby preps to 50 points. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Top 25 Kentucky Derby Contenders rundown with myself and Matthew DeSantis. Matthew, how you doing tonight?
Doing well, excited. As you said, we're ramping up this weekend, kicking things the 50-point prep races off with the Risen Star. And I think we're starting to get some more clarity about who's in, who's out on the Derby Trail. And I think we're going to see some big risers and fallers, not only this week, but in the coming weeks as well.
Absolutely. And we're coming off a weekend where there was 3 preps. Saw a lot of movement, the most movement we've seen all season. We've got a lot of familiar names dropping off. We got some others moving up, moving down, newcomers, blah, blah, blah. But let's jump right in at 25, Matthew. Yeah. A newcomer, and you will notice the light-colored numbers off to the left. The lighter red means that they're a first-timer on the list or a newcomer to the list, actually. Not necessarily a first-timer, but King's Barnes by Uncle Mo, Todd Pletcher at 25. What are we doing on King's Barnes? What do we know?
Yeah, this is a horse. I'm excited he got into our top 25 because I think he's a really fast rising horse. If anybody watched the races at Tampa the day after the Sam F. Davis, he won an allowance race there very impressively. Second win in as many tries. Really looked very, very good. Todd Pletcher basically said all pathways are open for him. Potentially the Tampa Bay Derby next, maybe the Florida Derby next, but he's got a lot of talent. And he really dispatched that field with ease. And it should be pointed out, one of the long shots who was in the Sam F. Davis scratched Noda, scratched out of the Sam F. Davis, ran in that allowance race, and King's Barn just completely obliterated him. So, he's very, very good, very talented.
Pletcher seems to have a couple moving up the charts here late, which is kind of more what we expected out of Pletcher Barn at this point in the season, but we're getting there. It's early, and like you said, we're stepping up into the 50-pointers now, so it's game time. Speaking of game, at number 24, Confidence Game by Candy Ride. Mr. DeSormo on the training that horse. I'm not sure where this horse is targeting next. Do you have any ideas or any updates on this horse?
I would imagine the Louisiana Derby or maybe the Rebel as an outside shot, but I'd imagine that Fairgrounds circuit is where you're going to see him run next. And this is a horse that finished third at the Lecomte to Two Phils and Instant Coffee, who were a little bit higher on our list. Had his form flattered a little bit as he beat Rocket Can, who of course came back to win the Holy Bull. And he is, back on the work tab. He registered a nice, easy 4 furlong work after that Lecomte, but now just ran a 1 minute and 5 furlong workout on Saturday at the fairgrounds. So looks like he's pointed to that Louisiana Derby, if I had to guess, based upon the fact he's only got 2 works in, probably get 2 more works in before that next run.
Yeah, it's a little bit wild. It looks like a lot of horses are a lot of the trainers are targeting horses to try to, get 1 win in, and you're either in or out with that win. And that's, especially obviously any horse in the Baffert barn has earned 0 points now. So they're all in that boat, but a lot of others as well. Moving to 23, First Defender. This horse is actually running this weekend as well at Fairgrounds. Race 8, I've noted here on the site, an allowance race. Steve asked me, said horse by Quality Road. What else? What are we looking for First Defender?
Well, we're looking how he's going to handle 2 turns and how he's going to handle a step up in class. Broke his maiden very professionally and very impressively on the Lecomte undercard, now going directly to 2 turns. And this is a banger of an allowance race. If people are interested, you have a horse like Banishing, who is just outside of our top 25 running in this. You have Tappet Shoes. You have Cagliostro, who is a really nice horse who broke his maiden there as well. You have a horse like Dennington in that race, who actually ran in a few graded stakes races. So very legitimate test for First Defender here. If he wins this one, he's one who would absolutely be a fast riser. You would imagine would target the Louisiana Derby.
Yeah, and any horse that wins that one's probably going to be climbing the chart. Whoever wins that one is going to have to do it in a legitimate way. Moving on, 22, National Treasure, more of a familiar name out of the Baffert barn by Quality Road. And again, I don't know what the deadline is. Are you aware of the deadline for the Baffert? I know there's a ruling waiting and the court process and everything else, but
there is a ruling, and obviously if an injunction is put in place, things could change. But if no injunction comes from the judge, Baffert horses must be transferred by February 28th in order to get points in order to be eligible to earn points. So even if they were to transfer, let's say March 5th, and then run in the Santa Anita Derby a month later, they're not eligible for points because they'd have to be transferred prior to the 28th. And so that has kind of left a lot of these Baffert horses in a little bit of limbo. National Treasure, very good horse, back on the workout tab. And I always say this when I talk about him, but pedigree would suggest more distance is better. Not surprising on Sunday, just registered a bullet 6 furlong work, going 111-3 in 6 furlongs out at Santa Anita. This is a horse that's going to like all the distance.
So this is a horse that'll be another one of those that may just be racing in one prep, trying to get the points, and
I would
imagine possible that is. So
yeah, I would imagine if we don't have a race targeted for some of these Bafferts, I would imagine it's going to be the Santa Anita or the Arkansas Derby. That's kind of where I think a lot of these Bafferts are going to end up running after they transfer.
21 Curly Jack. This horse is slated to run this weekend at the Risen Star, and off to the right side of the notes here, you see the next race, Risen Star, in that pinkish color. That is a notation that the horse is running this coming weekend. So Curly Jack by Good Magic, Tommy Amos Barn. What do we have on Curly Jack? Do we expect this horse to have a shot here this weekend?
You know, this is kind of a make or break moment because Curly Jack has been hanging around our list, but he's been on the bench since last year, and he's kind of had his form flattered a little bit because he, has run up against Instant Coffee. He's run up against some really good horses and always run competitively. My concern is that depending on which speed figures you look at, Curly Jack kind of is the horse he is already at this point. He ran 6 races as a 2-year-old. You kind of know what you're going to get. The big question is, has he improved during his time off? Has he grown? Has he matured? Has he gotten faster? Has his stamina improved? Things like that. So big kind of make or break moment at the Risen Star for Curly Jack. I might be a little further out on him than others, but obviously if he puts in a good effort, he's right there. But I have a feeling he could drop off this list if he finishes outside of the board.
Definitely make or break moment for Curly Jack. Let's move up to into the top 20. Number 20. Coming off the big win, Rocket Can by Into Mischief, targeting the Fountain of Youth. Is this correct?
Yeah, Bill Mott was kind of non-committal. He was talking about either Shadow Dragon or Rocket Can. One of the two certainly is going to target the Fountain of Youth. The other likely targeting the Florida Derby. It'll be interesting because that Fountain of Youth now has maybe quite a few big hitters in that we're going to get to a little bit later. So Mott might look to maybe try to, I don't want to say duck one of those, but never know. But Rocket Can, has to be taken seriously based upon that win. And that was a win off the bench. I know people weren't that thrilled with the Beyer speed figure, but you win a race, you win a graded stakes race off the bench, going wide the whole way around. Yep. You got to have some respect for that. And you'd figure second time off the bench, his speed figures are going to improve. I think we still haven't seen the best of this horse.
And I tend to lean on speed figures more than I think the a lot of the so-called sharps out there do. But even with, like you just said, I mean, you have to look beyond that in some cases. In Rocket Can's that example, I think I don't think the horse is going to necessarily be a top 5 contender at any point to win the Derby, but could be a little better than those numbers. 19 Tappett's Conquest, targeting the Risen Star to the Cox Barn.
Yep.
What do we know on this one? What are we doing?
This is Colin Sheehan's boy. This is his new Loggins, because Loggins is not on our list anymore. No. And so, but this is his new pet, if you will. But this is a horse that ran lights out, came up just a head short against Determinedly in an optional claimer on the underneath of the Lecomte card, is now coming back second from a layoff. I think the Risen Star sets up really nice for Tappett's Conquest because there's a lot of speed in that race. If you want to hear more breakdown, you can listen to me and Colin give an early preview and look at that video that's on the Trust the Profits YouTube channel. But I think there's a lot of pace. Tappett's Conquest should sit kind of just behind that. I think the perfect trip for him to take a step forward. I'm very high on this colt for Brad Cox.
That Risen Star on the right there should be highlighted in pink because that race is indeed this weekend. We must have had an admin error here. We'll have to speak with the secretarial staff on that one and get that straightened out for next week. But 18 Hijazi, another Baffert horse.
Yeah.
Bernardini. San Felipe, which is looking a little loaded up too. I mean, are we going to finally see a good race out of California?
Well, potentially. I mean, it looks like the best of the Bafferts, and we're going to get to another Yak Teen horse here in a second who's targeting that. But yeah, Hijazi is a really interesting horse. Has run against Grade One Company, held his own in the American Pharaoh against Cave Rock and National Treasure. He's thrown in 2 dynamite works the last 2 times out, a minute and 2 and a minute and 3, 5 furlong works. So obviously a ton of talent. The interesting thing is, I don't know what Baffert's going to do with this horse and if this horse gets transferred. And I say this because this is a horse that's owned by Zidane Racing. Those guys are incredibly loyal to Baffert, and Baffert seems to be enthralled with this horse's ability. I don't know if Baffert wants this one changing barns at all. And I wouldn't be surprised if they just skip the Derby entirely with Hijazi and focus on something else potentially. Just a hunch that I have, but just kind of read between the lines. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't always have to be a Derby winner in order to be a wildly successful horse in America.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Moving on, another Baffert, Reincarnate by Good Magic, also looks to be targeting that same race. Of course, we're speculating on a lot of these next race upcoming schedule. We're not sure on many of these. Just probables.
Yeah, and particularly the Baffert horses, because they're going to have to change barns in all likelihood. And it's possible a new trainer has a different strategy or tactic they want to use to where they want to run that horse next. But based upon everything now, it looks like San Felipe for Reincarnate, who worked out alongside National Treasure in that Bullet 6 furlong work earlier this weekend. So Reincarnate certainly looking very fit, looking very good. And this is a horse that really impressed at the Sham, beat Newgate, who is, of course, taken off the Derby trail because of a hock injury. But you also beat National Treasure in that race. So a very, very capable horse for Baffert, and one who was maybe thought a little less of initially, but I think has a ton of talent and ability.
Yeah, we're waiting to see the next race on so many of these horses, because we've seen something, flashes of brilliance or greatness at some point very early on, and we just need to see that next step out of so many of these. It's makes it interesting, but it's also tough to call who's ahead of who on these lists. But 16, we have Practical Move. This is the Yak Teen horse I think you mentioned a couple minutes ago. San Felipe also. What is new on Practical Move this week? Anything?
He is burning up the workout track is what's up. 3 consecutive super strong 5 furlong works. Most recent one was Saturday, 59-2 Bullet 5 furlong. This horse can flat out fly. He appears to be the goods. I know a lot of people, myself included, were a little skeptical of him because he won that Los Alamitos Futurity. That Los Al form can be a little bit quirky out in California. You never know how it translates. Seems like he's got all the ability, though. Tim Yak-Teen, I think, has himself a good one here, and would be interested to see him go up against the Bafferts in this San Felipe.
All right, let's jump into the top 15. Another one running this weekend, 15 Determinedly. You mentioned a little while ago here. Running in the Risen Star, and what looks to be a very competitive field. The deepest field so far for sure in the prep season, by Cairo Prince and the Mark Cassidy barn. What do we think? Is this horse going to be one of the favorites to win this weekend?
I don't know about one of the favorites. I think he'll probably be mid-priced, 6-1, 8-1 territory. And it's interesting. He was kind of gifted the lead last time, and he's not a horse that typically likes being on the lead. I actually thought he got a little bit lost on the lead. Yes, they went slow up front that benefited him, but he's not a horse that naturally wants to be on the lead. I actually think that's beneficial to him in the Risen Star, because there's some other horses, Victory Formation or Harlow Cap, some others who have more natural speed, and he can sit off of that. I think that's where he's most comfortable. And my concern with him is similar to Curly Jack. He kind of keeps running the same speed figures over and over again. So I don't know if there's a progression there, but certainly a horse that has done what he needs to do. And, the other reason he's 15 on this list is the race before this, or 2 back, I should say, finished second to Arabian Night, who is very, very high on our list. And any horse that finishes within earshot of Arabian Night gets a place in the top 25.
For sure. 14, we saw Red Route 1 run a couple weeks back. Looks like he's targeting the Rebel. Gunrunner, Asmussen barn. The Rebel is, let's be honest, from here, I think most of these preps will be pretty stacked up with at least 2 or 3 big names here. But what do we expect to see out of Red Route 1 in the Rebel? And are we 100% he's targeting that race? Yeah,
100% he's targeting that race. He's staying in that Oaklawn circuit, so that's where he's going to be going. The thing about Red Route 1 is he's a closer. So he's a little pace dependent. He's going to need a little bit of a fast pace to run into. He liked the slop in the Southwest as well. But this is a horse that he is back on the workout tab, registered a minute and one flat 5 furlong work on Sunday at Oaklawn Park. So that's not a bad work to get when you're getting right back on the tab after a big race. So expecting big things from him. Always like gun runners. Asmussen, of course, always holds those gun runners in high regard that he trains. So this is a good one, but little pace dependent. So that's just something to keep in mind on Red Route 1.
Yeah, he did look like he was accelerating down the stretch, which you like to see. He did look super impressive that last out. So that's something you like to see going into the Triple Crown season to get the distance. 13, we have a newcomer to the list. He may or may not have been on the list early on, but Litigate by Todd Pletcher Barn jumps in, coming off the big win this weekend by Blame. What do we think? Where's Litigate headed now?
Yeah, it looks like Litigate's probably going to target that Tampa Bay Derby or the Florida Derby. I mean, he's going to stay down in the Florida circuit. I think a lot of this depends on where Todd Pletcher decides to send Forte after the Fountain of Youth. If he decides to send Forte to the Florida Derby, then maybe you see Litigate stay at Tampa. If he decides to send Forte to the Bluegrass, which he's talked about, maybe Litigate makes the trip down I-95 and across on I-4 and down I-95 to Gulfstream Park and run in the Florida Derby. The thing about Litigate, very impressive win in the Sam F. Davis. Absolutely, that was a speed favoring track, but he did what he needed to do, got out there, ground saving trip from the 11-hole, crossing, cleared the whole field basically, and then sat back a little bit and then went. But it should be pointed out that a lot of his top competitors had very bad trips in that race. W&L was really cut off badly. Champion's Dream was eased. Prairie Hawk missed the break to some extent and was hard to handle early. And so a lot of those horses that were, close to being favorites or kind of around him in terms of odds didn't have great trips. And it should be pointed out, it was really Litigate and then 4 long shots right underneath him. So, I don't know how much we take out of that Sam F. Davis. You don't want to take anything away from the horse that won, but that race didn't come back particularly strong last year with Classic Causeway. We'll see if it comes back strong with the Litigate this year.
Number 12, super familiar name on the list here, dropping down, slowly dropping down the list, Cave Rock. And a couple of us are holding on to hope that he can get back on time. What are we doing? Because I know he just started works again this morning, I think, right?
Yep.
I don't know if it's too late, if he's even trying to run the Derby. What do we know? What's the latest?
Well, the latest is, back on the work tab this morning, 47-4, 4 furlong work, very aggressive work, especially because he has not worked in 3.5 months. You would imagine this horse needs at least 3 more works before this horse runs, which means Santa Anita Derby and or Arkansas Derby. And again, a lot of this is going to come down to what barn this horse ends up getting transferred to in order to accumulate Derby points. But I think you mentioned it earlier, it's a 1-shot win and you're in with this horse. He's got 1 shot to get the points necessary to qualify to get in the Derby. He's not going to get 2 prep races, and that's for sure.
Certainly capable, though, based on what we've seen in the past. So we will follow up with that. But until then, that's why you're seeing Cave Rock, who was once in our top 2, 2 or 3 at least to start off this list a few weeks back. But he's, with a lot of the unknowns building up, he's drifting down with so many others. Number 11 is a little bit more of a known commodity, Falston, another Baffert horse. Looked great last time out, ran second. Also targeting the San Felipe, I assume.
Yeah, and this will be the first time doing 2 turns for Falston, which I think we're all excited to see. This horse is bred for distance, obviously being the son of Curlin. Registered a nice 46-2, 4 furlong work on Sunday. And I just think, you mentioned the second to having a meltdown. That was across 1 turn in a sprint. Sprinter, And I think 2 turns, you're going to see a different horse. So the San Felipe is going to be a little bit of a make or break race for a lot of these Southern California horses.
Yes, sir. Going into the top 10, 2 fills, a little bit of a surprise to me personally. I've got 2 fills in my top 25, certainly, but a lot of love pouring in on 2 fills. Of course, like you said, some of his past performances are looking a little better based on his competition. The Lariat Ravelli trained, hard spun, sired, 2 fills. Going to the Risen Star running this weekend. Might end up being the favorite.
I don't know about the favorite. I think Victory Formation will probably end up being the favorite, but he's going to be I think he's morning line 8-1 or 6-1. So he's among the top 3 or 4 choices. And the thing about Two Phil is Colin Sheehan and I touched on this during our early look at the Risen Star preview. He just kind of turns in honest efforts, and he's a pretty good horse that is super versatile as well. He can win on the front end. He can win by sitting. You like to see versatility as you move on in these preps. The other thing is he ran second, and he ran a career best Buyers off the bench at the Lecomte, finishing second to Instant Coffee. If there's any sort of progression, usually second off the bench, you see a jump in speed figure. He takes a jump up in speed figure. He absolutely is a strong win contender in this Risen Star. Like I said, I think there's a lot of pace in this race. He's a horse that might really benefit from that, sitting just off, and it has a nice post position. I like Two Phils. He's a horse that every time I look at, I start to like him a little bit more and more.
Yeah, we see him slowly drifting up the charts here. And also, if he goes off anywhere near what you just suggested the morning line was, 6-1, 8-1, definitely a horse to look at this weekend.
I'll give you one more thing. If you're interested in Kentucky Derby futures, currently 95-1 on Two Phils.
Yikes.
I will take that all day because I think he's a shoo-in to make the starting gate as opposed
Put
to a lot of these
$10
horses.
on that one, ladies and gentlemen, or 100, whatever you can afford to do. So,
yeah.
Number 9, Blazing Sevens. He's been in there all along on our list. The Chad Brown joint. Fountain of Youth is the target.
Yep.
What's new with Blazing Sevens?
Recorded a 49-4, 4 furlong work this Saturday at Payson Park. 4th consecutive weekly work since coming back from the layoff, which, of course, last ran in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I think based upon the number of works he's had, he's going to be pretty close to 100% ready to roll for that Fountain of Youth because he's going to have at least 1 or 2 more works before that race. I think probably 2 more if he stays on his weekly cycle. So, 6 workouts leading into a race, you're going to be pretty well cranked up and or at least in good condition. I mean, maybe you're not all the way cranked up, but you're going to be in good condition for you to put in a good effort. And I think this is, Chad Brown's biggest shot of getting into the starting gate of the Kentucky Derby this year.
Number 8, new to the list, or at least back on the list. May have been on the list at one point. Hit Show, the Withers champ, coming out. Headed to the Wood Memorial next out of the Brad Cox barn by Candy Ride. Mm-hmm. What are we doing here? We think Hit Show is a legitimate contender. It looked like, I know I had him somewhere around 10 or 12 on my list. It looked like everybody else had him maybe slightly higher, but a lot of respect for that race. What do we think on this?
Yeah, I think a few things to garner respect. One, it was 9 furlongs. So you go a mile and an eighth. It just elevates you, in my opinion, over some of these mile and a 16th preps that we've seen to this point. The other thing is anybody who watched racing at Aqueduct on Saturday, I mean, at times it looked like these horses were running in quicksand, and Hit Show just looked easy. I mean, it looked easy for him. Just, he had a great setup in that there was pace pressure on Arctic Arrogance, who was the second choice. But once he decided to go, I mean, he just pulled away, ended up winning by 5.5 lengths over Arctic Arrogance. And just like I said, made it look easy doing it. I think that was really impressive. Recorded a 91 Beyer speed figure, which on that track is really saying something because they do not churn out many 90-plus Beyer speed figures in the winter at Aqueduct.
Absolutely. Definitely one to watch here. Number 7, Giant Mischief. Another Brad Cox horse here. Rebel Stakes targeting next.
Yep.
What are we seeing on this horse? How's he working?
Well, he's working great. He recorded a 59-4, 5 furlong work on Saturday, so he's ready to roll. Of course, coming off that springboard mile, I think he's maybe the biggest unknown commodity in our top 10, in that we've not seen him since that springboard mile where he blew the brake but ended up closing like a freight train to finish second. Tons of talent. I think benefits from a great barn. He has a lot of great workout partners, one of which we're going to talk about in a second, but I think that helps. So when you look at this, a lot of Cox horses, a lot of Baffert horses, the Pletcher horses, they work together. I think that's hugely helpful when these horses are prepping against other great horses. They really get pushed along aggressively. That competition fuels them. If you've ever been around horses, you know that certain horses are wired just not to want to lose to each other. And I think that sort of competition is really beneficial among these bigger barns.
Yep, just like human athletes. I mean, the more you're pressed, the better you'll perform. So, number 6, speaking of pressed to perform, Tap It Trice was super impressive last weekend. We're not quite sure where he's headed yet. I think we can probably guess, but what do
Yeah.
we know on his path here in the Pletcher barn?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be again a Fountain of Youth or Florida Derby, I would imagine. There's an outside shot. Maybe they ship him up to the Tampa Bay Derby. In case Pletcher wants to split up some of his horses. The one thing I'll say about Todd Pletcher is he is very good at getting his owners' horses in the Kentucky Derby. And you don't do that by kind of cannibalizing each other on the Derby trail.
Yeah,
And so that's why I always talk about him kind of spreading his horses out. Because a lot of people knock the fact that Pletcher may not have the highest winning percentage at the Derby because he enters all these horses, only has won a few times. But he does what his owners want. His owners want a Derby horse, and he gets them a Derby horse. And the way you do that is by only entering one or two of your horses in a prep, not by putting them all against each other. And so that's why I think it's going to be very interesting to see how strategic he is, spreading out Tapit Trice, Forte, some of his other horses that he's got, even a horse like Kings Barnes, who we talked about earlier. I think that'll be really interesting.
Yeah, and that I personally think Tapit Trice is sky's the limit for this horse. We'll see how he does next out, but
absolutely,
I will definitely be putting a couple bucks on that horse in his next race. I'm sure. Number 5, all three of these next top 5 horses out of the Cox barn, Verifying, headed to the Rebel by Justify. What's the latest on Verifying?
Well, Verifying is the horse that's been working out with Giant Mischief. So they've been working out together and clocking these 59 and 4, 5 furlong works this past Saturday. I think this is a horse that absolutely looks loaded for bear headed into the Rebel Stakes. Won very impressively in a $100,000 allowance optional claimer race back at Oaklawn. So he likes the track. I think this is a horse that could really, really impress in the Rebel. I know this is one you're very high on.
Yes, agreed. I'm watching these. I think the 5 and 6, Tapit Trice we just mentioned, and Verifying here are two of my top 3 or 4.
Yeah.
You guys had them maybe just a touch lower, but it's kind of more of a what do you value more, potential or what you've already seen, and I can't blame either way of looking at things because we've seen a little bit more from a horse like Instant Coffee, but I think the ceiling may be a little higher for Verifying.
Yeah.
But moving along here this weekend, this is going to be your favorite this weekend. Yep. I don't know about how much. I think the betting public may bring these a little bit closer than the morning line may suggest. But Victory Formation by Taprit is running the Risen Star this weekend.
Yep.
Probably the biggest name, the one to watch on Saturday.
Yeah, the one to watch, and you'll be wanting to watch the break because he's breaking from post 13, and he is a little bit of a need to lead horse. So he is going to need a clean break, and he is going to need to cross and clear a lot of horses to save ground in that race. So I think a very interesting strategy for Flavien Prat and Victory Formation. But if he gets on that lead, there's going to be some pace pressure because a horse like Harlow Cap, a horse like Determinedly, who I talked about, there's some other horses who like to be forwardly placed in that race. Going to see if he can hold up to pace pressure. Going to see if he can do the 9 furlongs. It's a big test for him. If he passes this, he may very well just vault up to the top of the list if he ends up winning this one.
Yeah, especially with that challenge coming from 13. Does he have a shot if he doesn't get to the rail with the lead?
He's never shown. I mean, he's shown like a little bit of an ability to rate early, but I mean, really, he likes to get on that lead. I think that's the big question is, does Brad Cox kind of recognize maybe you need to rate, maybe you need to sit second? If you remember last year, that was a big thing they did, with Epicenter, kind of forcing Epicenter to rate going into the Kentucky Derby, learning how to sit, not being on the lead.
Different approaches,
yeah, exactly. So I wonder if they try to do something similar there.
They may be forced to with that. I mean, a 13 hole is not pretty, especially some speed to the inside there. Number 3, Instant Coffee. Louisiana Derby bound. He's been impressive. Done nothing wrong.
Exactly. Done nothing wrong. Beaten 2 fills, beaten Victory Formation, or beaten Confidence Game. I would say the biggest knock on Instant Coffee is he's a little bit of a grinder in that he doesn't have this kind of dazzling turn of foot. And a little bit like Red Route 1, he might be pace dependent in that he likes to come from the back. I think in smaller fields, he can get away with it. The Louisiana Derby is going to be a big test because that's going to be a bigger field, 10, 12 horses probably. Can he weave his way through traffic in a bigger field? Obviously, that's going to simulate the Derby, the Kentucky Derby. So We'll see, but you can't knock what he's done to this point. His form to this point is impeccable. So hard to knock him, as he's won a grade 2 and a grade 3 the last 2 times out.
These next two, I believe, are the consensus top 2 out of almost everybody. Maybe in whatever order you want to put them in, but these two look like the cream of the crop so far. Arabian Night at number 2 by Uncle Mo, Bob Baffert's barn, Rebel Stakes bound, and we don't know again with the Baffert barn what's going to happen next, but we'll see. And Arabian Night has definitely, I think, been the most impressive single performance of 2023 so far.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that, or have we seen something better in the last couple of weeks?
No, I'd probably agree with that. I think Hit Show was pretty impressive, but I do think Arabian Night was probably the most impressive thing I saw in 2023 from any of these horses. And I should point out, back on the workout tab as well, which is good to see. Coming out of that Southwest, posted a 3 furlong, 35-3 work this morning on Monday morning. So good to see him back on the workout tab. Should be all geared up for the Rebel, and that should be a great race as well. And again, we'll see what if anything changes with regards to trainer changes, things like that. We should make note. I've mentioned this horse a couple times, Harlow Cap. He's not on our list, but he's the first horse to have gotten transferred from Bob Baffert's barn, and he is now running for Steve Asmussen. So we've already seen at least one horse get transferred. We're going to see others. This is just a storyline we're going to continue to update as it unfolds.
All right. And if Arabian Night was the most impressive of 2023 so far, the most impressive of 2022 was Forte in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Champion from last year. Going to the Fountain of Youth, and he has again done nothing wrong. Have we seen any reason to doubt that Forte can hang with these top few? Other than the fact that we haven't seen him race yet this year?
Yeah, my only concern with him is that he's back on the work tab. He's been on the work tab for a while. Now, Pletcher is not known. He's not like Brad Cox. He's not like Bob Baffert. Or even Asmussen. He doesn't send horses out for a lot of bullets. He doesn't really force horses to run too hard on works. But I will say the works that Forte have turned in so far down in South Florida have not been eye-popping. 250-plus second for furlong works, and then just this past Saturday turned in a 103 and change 5 furlong work. So it's not again, don't know what Pletcher's asking him to do. Don't know what, how much they're maybe holding him back. But I would say that if you're at all concerned, or if there's at all a kind of dent in the armor, maybe you look at some of these works and go, maybe this horse isn't going to be all the way cranked up for the Fountain of Youth. We'll see. But certainly based upon his 2-year-old form, impossible to poke holes in that form. Incredibly impressive. But I think he's going to be one we're all waiting with bated breath to see in that Fountain of Youth.
Yes, sir. And we are starting to see the picture we talked about a little earlier. It's coming into focus a little bit now, the real contenders. And it's going to be more so that way week by week here. This is the first 50-pointer. This is the first pretty much factually you win, you're in. You're pretty much starting from here. So this is good stuff. Matt, anything else to close it out? We're going to keep doing this every week as long as there's some notable changes going on, which I'm sure there will be after each weekend here. So
especially after this week's Risen Star, and just encourage people to make sure to subscribe to Trust the Profits, because we got you covered, wall-to-wall coverage of the Risen Star, early previews, capping the card, doubling down. I mean, we got everything covered there on the Risen Star from a lot of different angles. So if you want to get caught up on the Fairgrounds card this Saturday, make sure to subscribe.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be back next week. And like Matt said, stay tuned for all the other great content coming up this week leading into the Risen Star. Peace.